Hi everybody and welcome to this webinar where we'll be discussing mastering outsourcing for accountants, and I'm joined by Mitul Pandya of Charterwells. Hi Mitul, nice to see you.
Hi Andrew, good to see you. Thanks for welcoming me onto this webinar.
My pleasure, thanks for coming. Mitul's going to share some of his expertise and experience around implementing outsourcing in Charterwells. So before we dive into that, Mitul, tell us a bit about Charterwells.
Yeah, love to. So I'm Mitul Pandya, owner of Charterwells Accountants. I set up the firm just shy of 15 years ago from scratch. I still remember my first ever meeting with my first potential client. I was feeling like an absolute fraudster. However, I had plenty of experience prior to that to be in that position. So it was a bit of a funny one, picking up your first, building your portfolio of clients initially. So that was 15 years ago. I carried on doing that for the first 8 years. Referrals started coming through organically, and then setting up an office, first member of staff, looking at various systems, upgrading licenses. So there's lots and lots taking place. From day one, we focused on small owner managed businesses, and we shied away from the high street because back in those days, cash was a big problem, not being reported properly, even casual labour, stock going missing. There were all sorts of problems in the high street. So we shied away from that. So what I managed to build was a portfolio of clients which were professionals, anybody coming onto the digital scene at the time, which was great, and that was fast paced, and properties. They were the three key areas that we really focused on. And because we segmented it into those three areas, the referrals just kept coming through, which was brilliant. Workaholic, relationship-led, hence I'm very much involved in the day-to-day business, even now by choice, although my role has significantly shifted. And then over the last 5 years, we've been acquiring other smaller practices. We've had 5 acquisitions under our belt now.
Okay.
And yeah, there's lots of stories there which I can delve into depending on time also. And I'm pleased to say that in our journey, about just over 5 years ago, that's when we teamed up with Befree. And it was at the start of the acquisition journey as well for us. So the timing was crucial.
Yeah.
And today, it's myself, we're a team of 10 spread across here. We're based in Bush in Hertfordshire and India and Gujarat as well. So that's us at this stage. And it seems as though the pace of growth is only increasing, but our capacity to do that is also increased, so we can absorb that in nicely without having any deficit in the quality of delivery for service and relationships to clients.
So that's really, we'll definitely dive back into the acquisition strategy because I think it's important that scalability, putting the processes in place to scale is probably the biggest. You see firms trying to acquire other firms, sure. So we'll definitely come back onto that.
Okay.
Just before we dive into the first couple of questions, if anybody on the webinar, any of the guests want to ask any questions, please do use the chat box, and we'll also be running some polls as we go through, and we will try and answer the questions on the webinar. If we can't, then we will get in touch afterwards. So that being said, off we go. So obviously 5 years ago, partnered with Befree, implemented outsourcing.
Sure.
Just it'd be good to share your insights about how you made that successful, how that worked for Charterwells.
Okay, so we've never ever dipped into outsourcing whatsoever prior to this. So I was a newbie. We dipped our toe in first. I think that's the best thing we did. I remember in those days, I don't know if you still have this, but it was a pilot job, he used to call it. So yeah. we had all the agreements signed up, confidentiality, data protection, all of that was done up front. Then you allowed me to send a pilot job, and I believe it was a freebie, which was really nice also. He turned it around very quickly. There were a couple of queries which I was able to answer, but the quality of the work paper was really good, better than what my team were doing here. Okay. So I was very, very impressed with that. And then straight off the back of that, we took on board a part-time person. They called it a resource, so half a resource they called it. So it's a part-time person dedicated to us, which was really good. So although the team size then was, I believe, around 300 people, it wouldn't have just been anybody who's available on that particular day. It was actually one person dedicated. So I was able to meet, start building a bit of a rapport, communications on a regular basis, which was really good. And yeah, the workflow was coming through really well. overall, because I knew what to expect. It wasn't a case of, they'll just take care of it. It's a person, it's a real human being, it's training involved, nurturing involved. And I went through that process carefully. I enjoyed it, to be fair, because I like training up my team members. And I think I take a lot of pride and value in that. I saw my first resource as a team member. What also helped was, even though I only had half a resource, there was a supervisor above him who was always checking and always was liaising with me. So I actually had 2 points of contact. Plus, we had the business development manager, Sean, at the time, who's still with us, and he's become a good friend over the years also. So that gave me a tremendous amount of comfort. So that is how it pretty much started with us in the early days.
I think it's interesting point, and we did a webinar a couple of weeks ago with a different firm, and we had the conversation about the fact that you saw the Befree team member as part of your team, which is what they are, right? And that makes a difference, because I've been involved with quite a few outsourcing projects over the last few years, and I think the ones that work tend to see it in that way. This is an extension of our team. I think that's very much why I got on board with Befree. That's the model here. It's difficult. It's not just sending a task somewhere. You're actually sending it to a person you can develop a relationship with. You can teach people. Obviously, the technical knowledge is a given when you outsource, but actually understanding how you want things done in your business, that's really important as well. And the only way you can do that is by building a relationship. So that's great to hear. And which probably leads on quite nicely to my next question, actually. When you decided to go down the outsourcing route, obviously you'd have looked around at which partner to partner with. What were the sort of the key factors you were looking when you were evaluating those partners? What were the key things you were looking for?
Fine. It wasn't anything to do with the size, scale, window dressing, or all the different services they offer. It was really trust, to be fair, because what I did is, like I mentioned, I took on that half a resource. Within 3 months, I actually flew out there to India. I wanted to see the offices, meet the team myself. I was very fortunate enough to meet the owners of the business as well, Viral and Jignesh also, and also Viral's wife. And that gave me a tremendous amount of confidence, because it is a family-based business. Although it's huge, hugely successful, very reputable, but ultimately it's a very humble business in that regard, very open, transparent, and that gave me a lot of confidence that this is a real partner which we can rely upon for the foreseeable future here. And they understood us, really. They understood what I was about, what I was looking to do. And they were actually proactive in giving me different solutions also, but not in a salesy way, whereby, take it on board, there's a special offer on, because I don't buy into any of that nonsense at all. Yeah. So it just worked. And sometimes you go by gut instinct, and you've been out there and it just felt right. This is right. And plus I tried that. So I think during that trip, or just shortly after that trip, I went from a half a resource to 3 people very, very quickly. Wow. 3 full-time people. So that was the biggest driver for me. And that was a big shift, because suddenly we actually have a team overseas. And with that came along a dedicated phone line, which we invested in also. So it's our team overseas. So yeah, that was the key thing there, because there's lots of competitions. I get emails. I'm sure your other listeners get emails inundated by outsourcing companies, and I'm sure some of them are good, some of them not so much perhaps. But for me, it just worked. And I think going out there, doing that trip, seeing it for yourself makes a big difference. I know there's YouTube videos and all sorts of things you can show them, but really understanding the culture as well makes a big difference. And since then, I've made it a point to be out there at least once or twice a year also, just to spend time with the team.
I think that's great. And I think it's important for the team. I think the team, not just the Charterwells team, but all of our sort of our partners team, the teams appreciate that kind of contact. It's important to have that relationship. They're a member of 2 teams, really. So they're a member of Befree, also a member of Charterwells. But having the fact that you're going over there and showing them how important they are to you is, I think, is brilliant. And I think similarly, I think I'd share the same view that Befree is a huge business, but the owners are very, very hands-on. There's a great culture here. The culture of quality is good, because I think that's one of the things in outsourcing that I've seen over the years is there are some good competitors out there. But there are a lot of people out there who don't have that emphasis on quality. Correct. I think that's really important, and I think historically that's what's happened. That's put accountants off going down the outsourcing route, is they've done the pilot jobs, maybe 5-10 years ago, and what they had back wasn't sufficient quality. I think it's moved on significantly since then, and I think Befree definitely. I think it's vital, because the point of outsourcing is to free you up to go and run your business, not have to worry about the quality. So I think we'll come back on to that, but I think that's it. Some great factors. So trust. I think just in summary, trust was probably the biggest driver for you. Then actually seeing the operation and saying, these are going to be a partner with us.
And also, when you're out there, you can sense how the employees feel about working there. Okay, you can sense their energy. Okay, and in many cases, you don't want to be in a situation whereby it's almost like a slave-like culture, and everyone's afraid of management and the senior management. That wasn't the case there at all. They do lots and lots of socials. There's a real collaborative feeling amongst the team that they belong to an organisation. There's a real genuine purpose across teams. The training is phenomenal. There's a lot that firms in the UK could learn by spending time out there with Befree. So anyone else who's listening, invest in that plane ticket, I would say.
Invest in code, definitely. On that note, we've got a poll running. We've just launched a poll. Just to find out if anybody's currently using outsourcing or considering it. So that might frame some of the questions we can deal with later. So please do contribute to the poll, and we'll try and answer that. Okay, I'll skip that because host, I don't need to vote on that, but please do vote. Next, I think the next question is, we've done the good stuff. Obviously, it's great. You've gone out and it's obviously helped Charterwells achieve the growth. What were the challenges and what were the common challenges you face and actually do face, and how do you overcome them? Because it's all very well, in any partnership, it should be generally productive and everybody's moving forward, but occasionally there'll be some challenges you face. Just talk us through a few of those and share how you resolve that and how Befree helped you resolve them. If they
Sure. Okay. Few challenges we've faced. English, communication skills. That was one of the key ones that we've faced in the early years, in particular. Technically, people are extremely adapted to all the tax legislation, disclosures, accounting requirements, but being able to communicate that clearly, that's a different skill set completely, and that's where they really lacked initially. Not because of lack of effort, it's just the upbringing, the surroundings, being a second language. So that was an issue there. Where I had an advantage was I speak Gujarati, I understand Hindi fluently, I speak it brokenly, but so I could communicate in different ways to them. And spending time out there was really good. But I can see that being an issue. But however, they have invested a lot of time, energy in making sure the communication skills of the team members have improved. What they also have got is not only just a business development manager, but you'd have a key point in contact there, one person. So if you have multiple people there, you'd have one manager or supervisor overseeing all the jobs and clearly communicating with you as to what's happening. And I remember, Andrew, in the early years, we would have just ad hoc, once a week or 3 times a week, whereby we're just catching up with jobs. And those weren't really scheduled. So either I'm busy or they're busy, and we're just getting through things quickly, and it may not be very effective. Just over a year ago, they changed that to, I get an update by email, just to say, look, this is the current status of jobs we're in. These are the jobs that we have issues with. So either myself or a team member can just quickly know where we are with that. And it's clearly communicated, because a lot of it's done on email anyway. But having said that, the communication skills, spoken language communication skills of the team members have improved over the years significantly, which is really good. So yeah, it's all happening in the right direction. The second challenge was around culture in India. Culture from the sense of, look, it's a developing nation. It still is. In many ways, it's far more developed than the Western world. But in other ways, it isn't still. And because of that, a lot of the workforce, obviously, they're younger, they're eager, they want to make a name for themselves, save up and build a life for themselves. You're not looking at third generation wealthy families there as such. You're looking at people hardworking, ambitious, that come from pretty much nothing, and they've landed their first office job here. Quite rightly, well deserved as well. Where that causes an issue in culture is they want to please. So if they see somebody from London or the UK, for them it's like, oh, yes sir, 3 bags full, sir, which My first trip out there, I completely destroyed that culture. So look, I'm just like you. You probably know more than me, to be fair, in many cases. So please do not have that pressure to say yes when you have some doubts in your mind. I'm a team member. I'm in your team. You're in my team. We're one in that regard.
Yeah.
I may be the captain, okay, but a captain does not have to be the best player on the pitch. Yeah. That's a given, right? Yeah. I need communication. I need people to be able to just say to me, no, this is a nightmare job. It's going to overrun. We have missing information. The clients promised us this, but not delivered here. That then gives me good true feedback, and I can deal with it early on, as opposed to false promises, which were happening right at the beginning, to say, yes, it's all under control, Mitul. We'll have it delivered to you by next week. But when the delivery comes, it's full of holes. And I think that is a function of fear and culture in that country. But it is changing. And me going out there and just sitting with them and saying, look, I'm just like you in that regard. I'm nervous. I have concerns. We could lose clients. And I don't want to upset my team out there also, because it's not fair. But that's been overcome nicely. But I need other practice owners who, you don't want your ego massaged and then realize that there's a quality issue afterwards. Just be open, just like you would with somebody out here today. So that's fine. And the other challenge is workflow, because it's all great to turn on a machine to say, right, we have a new team out there, but you've got to plan up front. What type of work are they going to be doing? Is it going to be consistent? Can you predict this? And you and I both know, I look after the SME world. We have weird and wonderful clients. And look, they go through life just as you and I do. So they may be amazing for the first few years, but then suddenly there's a problem in terms of the information they're giving us is a little bit late or it's incomplete. We have to be adaptable in that regard. And that's where it's helped us with them, because if we have clear communication lines and there's no fear whatsoever, it's brilliant because we know where each other stands. Also.
So I think it comes back to trust and communication. It's the same things keep coming: trust and communication, and like any new joiner to a team, your first couple of weeks you're keen to please, and then giving them the trust to actually challenge their manager, and that's similar. That's culturally how every country is different with that. That's similar for most new joiners. But it brings up the next sort of question: is how did you decide? Well, first part of that question. What do you outsource? So what types of tasks are you outsourcing at the minute?
We've looked at our practice and divided it into different work streams. So VAT returns, payrolls, self-assessment tax returns, company accounts, company corporation tax, confirmation statements, auto-enrollment pension submissions. So we've got various different work streams that we have, and we can predict what's coming through, whether it's on a monthly, quarterly basis or annual. And what we've done is we've pretty much mirrored what the India team are doing to what my UK team do. So they can do all of it for us. What they don't do, and this is fairly obvious, but I need to state this, they're not client facing, because of the communication barrier, but they can do the majority of the work, which is important.
Yeah.
How that's helped us is we're a fast growing business here in the UK. We can't predict what's coming around. So, for instance, even today before this call here, we're early afternoon, we've picked up 2 new clients this morning. And in both cases, there's catch-up work to be done, which is urgent because they've just left it to last minute for whatever reason. So that's changed our workflow for September. So we've got 2 urgent jobs that need to go out, which we hadn't planned for. This is where it really helps, because if we have 2 teams here, if I have my guys in India, and if it's particularly, let's say it's a Holy Week and there's a number of holidays taking place, we can take care of the work here. So I've de-risked it by mirroring it in both cases. The only difference here is my team in the UK, they're much more client-facing. Well, they are client-facing. And they're communicating consistently with clients, whereas the team there, they run everything through us first as the final reviewer, checker. Only once we're happy, it goes out from here. They don't do any submissions for us, unless it's a simple payroll or a nest submission, which is fair enough in that regard.
But I presume that's the way the Charterwells run your business. You want your team in the UK to be client-facing. But presumably having the team in India means that they can spend more time on that relationship building, on that communications piece, because
it allows us to get agile as well, so we can genuinely grow. Because it's always great to say you want to grow, but all you're going to do is just create a firm which is not organised. Okay, and you could be in a position whereby the quality then slips, and then it's a pointless exercise ultimately. So this really helps us. Yeah.
It sounds like your process. You've got a process that you've got the Charterwells process. You mentioned the acquisitions that you've made in the last 5 years. So I think this is probably something I've come across when I've been working on outsourcing projects. The ones that work really well are where there's a clear workflow. I mean, these tasks are delegated to these teams.
Yes.
That task can go there. Your task planning in place, whether that's through a practice management software or etc., or even a spreadsheet where you can use Excel. Lots of firms still use Excel spreadsheets to run a practice, and they use it relatively successfully. It's a bit awkward to do that, but it's doable. So I think that's probably one of the things I would share that's really important is you've decided you've got your methodology for using outsourcing, which is this allows the team in the UK to focus on that piece of the job that we think is important, which is the client comms bit, which is probably why you're growing. Your clients are happy, they're getting communicated to regularly. That's where you get that's where you get lots of referrals and getting new business. But equally, because you've got the flexibility of the outsourced team in India, it means that those other tasks can be delegated to free up the time to invest in that, which is surprisingly that is probably one of the blockers I see with a lot of firms.
Sorry to talk. Well, a lot of firms they like to silo things. So look, they're in charge of VATs completely, and they want that hands-off approach. It doesn't work. You need them to be an extension of your UK team, so you're all doing the same level of work. That helps you with quality control, consistency of workflows, and training also, because things are always evolving all the time. Next month, we're going to get a whole raft of new changes coming through with the budget. And if my team are completely hands-off FATs or we don't deal with payrolls, that can create danger for us later on. So it's important for both teams to be adaptable and knowledgeable in all areas. We can help each other and train each other regularly.
I think that's right. And you would, one of the other conversations we had before we started the call today is you've grown internationally, so you've got the Dubai business there.
Yes.
How was having the outsourced team helped you because that's a big move, right? Moving internationally, going to a different marketplace, again, different culture. How did that help? How do you utilize that to help you accelerate there?
We've preempted the demand that's going to be coming through over the next few years because corporation tax was introduced. The first tax return will be due in 2025 for submission and payments. But we were speaking about this over a year ago internally when I was last in India. And since then, they've really done the research in the taxation system, the tax authorities, what's required to set up, prepare and submit. So the whole process is mapped out. And that's been a tremendous help for me also, because I know that it's not just my UK team. I have two teams ready for that influx of work that's coming through. So then we took the decision last year to actually set up out there. So we have a separate entity in Dubai, and we're now in a position where we're taking more clients. At the moment, it's going to be on a smaller scale because I do want to have that test run going through, because the authorities out there and their systems are very, very new and they're evolving. You think HMRC haven't got it all together. Wait till you see what's out there. But they're moving in the right direction and they've got far superior investment taking place over there. So they do have a one-up over HMRC. But again,
I've heard that. I've heard that the investment. I speak to someone who spends a bit of time in Dubai in the software world, and they are really sort of unsurprisingly putting lots of money into it, which helps. That's probably just leads me on to, sorry to cut across to you a little bit.
No problem.
It sinks in nicely, segues into the next question, which is, I've been working in accountancy software for too long, probably about 15 years, right? And tech has obviously changed. How has that helped with outsourcing? Because if you think about, even 5 years ago to where you are now, but 10 years ago, which is when cloud accounting started to become more prevalent, has tech helped you with that, the handoff of work to the team in India, or just talk us through how tech has changed to help you with that?
Okay, because we're fully cloud-based, and what that allows us to do is all of our systems, programs we use, you can just get into those. You have your own licenses. So we have to set up their own special licenses for my team in India, so they can access everything, but they're accessing our systems. So we're not sending anything across to India to do some work. So that helps from a compliance perspective, client confidentiality, GDPR, and we went through that whole audit process with you guys up front, and I'm sure you can share some more information on that.
Absolutely.
But the tech has helped us tremendously because they could be in the same room as me or be sitting in Gujarat. It doesn't make a difference. We're all using the same systems in real time. Also, from a audit standpoint, I know who's logging in, what they're doing, what's been changed. So it gives me real comfort to know, even if I'm sitting on a beach on holiday, I can just check in on my phone to know that these files were accessed or what's been duplicated or deleted. We have that information, which is good. So, and that's all down to tech, really. And we're at the early stages of AI as well. So that's going to be another exciting development that's taking place within us. We're going to be looking at that. Two of your senior guys came to fly out and to see me earlier this year, which was really nice. And we sat down, we discussed the next steps as well, which is really exciting. But again, we want to tread carefully, okay, and make sure that we don't ruin what we've already established, just because we want to jump onto the next flashy thing or exciting bit of kit there. But to answer your question, without having that cloud set up, it's very difficult because you're scanning information, emailing it across into their system, and you can't keep a true track of what's happening here. So that's key. I think a lot of small practitioners, you'd be surprised, Andrew, they're struggling with Excel. I know practitioners who are still using lever arch folders, to be fair. So there's a lot of change that needs to take place in the small space here in the UK.
That doesn't surprise me, and it's kind of a bit of the work I do because I've got because I work with lots of accountants, and what's interesting is that change, that shift that's happening, and I think outsourcing is part of the wider project, right? So to outsource, you've got to have the process in place. I think it's there are firms that are ready to do it. If you're using things like Xero, QuickBooks, probably quite easy to start using outsourcing, even if you only use those systems like Befree or Platinum Partner or in Australia, which gives you a sort of sense of the size of the number of Xero clients they have there. But I think for me, that mapping of the process has to be, the mapping of the process has to start before the tech. I think often what you see is people will sign up for some shiny tech, but their process isn't finalized. So they end up working within the confines of the software, not getting the most of it. And I think you put it, so this is a bit, I think, where outsourcing really, really works well is when you've got, going back to your point about, here's how we work and operate as a firm. Here's the tech. So we want to operate that way. We need that tech. We need that type of outsourcing. We want our outsourcing people to do that. It's a really clear, it becomes really easy. And then when we've gone down the outsourcing route, we're going to communicate and train those people in the way we want it to be done. Not on the technical side. The outsourcer should be taking care of that, and the outsourcer should be looking after the team there. But I think it's almost like the best projects I've seen running are when a firm, and you can start from anywhere. You can start from being, that firm that is using lever arch files. Because I've seen those firms go, right, do you know what? We don't want to work with lever arch files anymore. Often it's when there's a transition of ownership that tends to be the trigger. As you've probably seen, you probably absorb firms, or maybe you don't. Maybe your due diligence is going not for me, which is quite right. But it isn't as hard as you think it is. I think because actually, for a very, very small time investment, you can map out your process on a piece of paper and go, okay, how do we now migrate to the cloud, which people are still scared of. By the way, if you've got 200-300 clients using spreadsheets or manual bookkeeping, that process sounds really intimidating. I've done loads of them. It doesn't have to be, and that's where outsourcing can also help in terms of migrations and all that kind of stuff. But I think it has to start with that. Here's how we want to do things. Here's how we do things. Here's the tech we needed. Here's outsourcing, and it just flows. And it isn't. I think even saying it there, it sounds like it's a huge amount of work, but I've seen firms come from absolutely chaotic setups and everything is done ad hoc. To go back to the point about our communications meetings when you first started were ad hoc. Now they're fixed and scheduled, much more productive, much more valuable to you and probably to our team as well. So I think mapping that process mapping. It's a bit of a hobby also. I'm ranting now, so I'll be quiet. But I think the tech is great, but you have to have the process mapped up first. Just conscious we're coming probably to the end of the 30 minutes we had allocated, so we will do some questions and answers. But before we dive in the Q&A, I've kind of taken you down various paths for the questions. Most important bit is if you could give one or two pieces of advice to anybody looking at outsourcing, what would they be?
Okay. Treat them as if they're your own team members. And also, if it's Befree, which I hope it is that you use, tap into their knowledge, experience, because one of the things you just mentioned was mapping out your processes. That's very daunting for a sole practitioner or a practice owner with a few staff members to do, they can help you to do that process. They can pretty much do it for you if you just give them, this is the tech we have, what do you suggest? And you'll be surprised in that regard. That's the only other thing I'll add to that and answer your question there.
Perfect. Which I think means we've probably finished bang on time in terms of that was more luck than judgment because I'm sharing it. Right? So I'll take the win there. But I think the important bit now is have we got any questions that people want to ask? Because we've got the opportunity to ask someone who is doing the do, who's seeing the good and the bad. Do we have any questions for any of the people in the audience? So it looks good. Very quiet. Still 11 people on. There must be some questions on here. Where's the questions? Let me go to the questions bit. If not, I'm sure I can find a few questions, Mitul.
I'll tell you a few other points that people should consider also is make sure you disclose this or speak to your PI insurer because they have their own rules and regulations, which then you can feed back to Befree to make sure that their contracts and the way they're set up is aligned with that. Also with the ICAW, because we have to complete our annual returns with them and they need disclosure over this also. And even actually on that point, we were introduced to Befree via the Institute of Chartered Accountants. So again, that was a level of comfort that we had at the beginning, which was really nice.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think what I'd add on to that is as well, which we talked about communicating with the outsourced team.
Sure.
I think communicating with the UK team is important. I think probably slightly different. You've kind of implemented this 5 years ago, where I've seen projects maybe not work as well as they should have with firms looking to use outsourcing is you start using outsourcing, or one of the partners or the directors decide we're going to go down that route, and they don't share it with the UK team, and they don't explain, but we're doing this to free you up to do the client-facing piece, or we want to grow. This is what we're doing it, and there's an element of a little bit of fear because the existing team can be a bit fearful. Okay, does that mean I'm going to lose my job, or does that mean my job is going to change? I think where firms actually are open and transparent with their team and go, right, here's what we're going to do, here's how we want you to do it, works brilliantly. Where you end up, I use example going back to the kind of pilot job you mentioned at the beginning. It's a common way of getting started. Often that was getting delegated. I've seen that get delegated from the director who's driving the project to the managers of the team.
Okay,
they're told, right, delegate some work to the outsourcer. They don't. It doesn't happen. So you never end up testing it because the managers are sort of, I don't know, why am I going to delegate that? I want to take my position. So I think, again, equally important that you're open and transparent with your team, within reason, obviously, but just explain this is the reason, business-wise, why we're doing it. And that's another block I've seen.
That's important. I totally agree with what you just mentioned there, especially for the larger practices, because when you have a multi-partner practice, what I've seen happen is they have a manager dedicated to dealing with the outsourcing, and the poor chap, he's stuck between 4 or 5 partners over here who are bombarding him with deadlines and jobs to do, and he's trying to liaise with these guys, and it becomes a nightmare if you just funnel it through one person and you give them a title, outsourcing manager, for instance, in the UK. That's the wrong way to do it. Have your whole team involved at various levels. And of course you can have somebody in charge, but everyone's communicating with their team members over there. So there are no bottlenecks, and there's a free flow of information taking place at different levels for different jobs continuously. And then all the partners are fed information on a timely basis as to what they need, rather than chasing this one poor chap who's probably anxious and taking time off work, afraid to get into the office on a Monday. I've spoken to them in many occasions.
And it's kind of, it just feels like they've got to keep things secretive, and
100%. And in many cases, they pick on some Gujarati chap in the office because he speaks the language.
It's crazy, and it's such a big amount. But I totally agree that it has to be kind of. I think the way the mirroring is a good description. The fact you've mirrored it, that makes sense. It's just about engaging it, and I think the other bit I would say, and this is probably me spouting off, and feel free to say, "Shut up, you don't know. You've never done it. You've only been an outsider." But I think there's probably getting it started in the first 3 to 6 months takes a bit of input. because there's the training, the document and processing. It gets easier. I think once you start using it, you start sending more work, and then that's what I've seen with a lot of firms where maybe the first 3 months have been quite time intensive to get the process running, maybe 6 months, depending on the size of the firm. But then once you get that workflow working, you just start delegating more and more tasks to the outsourcer, to the outsourced resource, because it frees you up to do the stuff you want to do, which is you want to grow the business, right? You want to acquire firms, you want to look at Dubai. Lots of firms have those plans, but just because it's going to be, it's going to be a bit more work. Like anything, any project you start, the first 3-4 months is going to be hard, and that's one thing I would say. Don't think it's going to be like that forever. That first bit is probably the front loading of investment. It gets easier.
And in the initial first, say, 3 to 6 months, dedicate time for feedback and training. And that's going to be all the errors and the things that they could have improved upon. And set that task once a month, for instance, include your other team members also. They realise that whilst they're being trained over in India, the UK team are also training subliminally as well, just by being present in that meeting. And it really helps. It just helps build trust. Again, communication barriers are removed, and they feel comfortable in approaching us with questions rather than trying to please, which is very important.
Again, that comes down to trust. I think on that note, I'll just check the chat. Have we got any? Don't think we've got any questions in here.
Good. I hope we've answered.
We've answered everything perfectly, right? Which is great. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn. I'm Andrew Garvey, or email me at andrew@befreeltd.com. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you've got. If you've got a general process question, I love those because I'm a nerd and increasingly I'm enjoying getting stuck into the process piece as well. But Mitul, just wanted to say thank you for joining us and sharing all of your brilliant experience. I think it's always more useful to hear from someone who's done it than someone who is talking a good game. You've done it, right? You've grown a team in the UK, you've grown a team in India. You're going to grow a team over in Dubai, I'm sure, within the next next wee while. But really, thank you for joining us. And I think on that note, we will call it there. If anybody has any questions, you know where we are. Once again, Mitul, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, Andrew. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you.